What's up, everybody? My name is Dave Jackson, and you're listening to Tales from the Backlog. This is a video games deep dive review podcast where each week I'm joined by a guest to bring a game out of the backlog, play it, and discuss. My guest today is a friend of the show, a writer, streamer, YouTube creator, and low-orbit real estate mogul. Welcome to the show, CtrlAltNoob.
Hello, thank you for having me. I've got to pay the bills somehow with that low-orbit real estate.
Yeah, might be in a bit of trouble if we go by what's going on in the game here, but it's great to have you on the show for this.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. I remember when we were trying to pick out a game that we were going to play, and we had a few, and I'm really glad that we chose this one.
Yeah, we've got a really interesting one here today for sure. Today's game is Tacoma, which is a walking simulator adventure game developed and published by Fullbright in 2017. Tacoma was directed by Steve Gaynor and Michael Xurix. Hopefully I'm saying that name correctly. And if this is your first time listening to the show, first of all, thank you for stopping by. And here's how spoilers work on the podcast. We are not going to spoil the story for Tacoma for a while. So if you don't want to be spoiled, you can still listen for quite some time. We'll talk about, what kind of game it is. We'll set up the story and how the mechanics work and stuff like that. And then there's a timestamp down in the show notes for when spoilers begin, and then you can jump out at that point. So what is Tacoma? I say, for my elevator pitch, I say Tacoma is why you should never work in outer space, exhibit 793. Noob, what's the pitch for you?
I think that is very fair enough. My pitch, right. Explore an evacuated space station and feel the dread as you walk in their shoes, wondering what happened here and gradually finding out.
There we go. Yeah, exactly. A bit more of a pitch that might explain what you're actually doing in the game. So you might be able to sell this game more quickly than me. I have played this game 2 times. The first time I played it on PS4, and I most recently replayed it on PC. Both playthroughs took about 3 hours to get through. How about you? Where did you play this? How long did it take?
So I played this on PC. I actually got it on an Epic giveaway, so I got it free, and I was like, cool. Played it on PC. I streamed it, actually. It took 9.5 hours, which is way above average. I don't know how it took me 3 times longer than it took you.
I think if the streams are particularly chatty, then maybe that adds to it.
And we did look at every little thing that was on this space station. Like, we picked up everything and had a look at it. So
yeah,
lots of theory crafting, and obviously reading stuff out loud as well takes a bit more time. But
right.
9.5 hours it was.
Perfect. Cool. So let's start, as we always do, by talking about our histories with Tacoma. And I know that for both of us, our histories with this game actually started with Fullbright's earlier game, Gone Home. So tell everybody about your history with Fullbright and then why you wanted to play Tacoma.
Yeah, so, okay, my history, I took a break from gaming for a long time, and because I didn't really know that games could be so story focused. So when I came back to gaming, I was just doing Google searches all the time about games with good stories, and Gone Home was the one that came up a lot as a must play, and I was like, okay, I gotta play this game. So I did, I got it, I started it a few years ago, and I had exactly the same problem that you had. I listened to your Gone Home episode where obviously it's set in this big mansion. I walked up to the front door, there's stormy weather happening all around you. I read the note on the front door. I was like, okay, this is a little bit spooky. Went inside, picked up a couple of things off a shelf, and I was like, nope, this is way too scary for me. Turned it off. So then I'd heard of Tacoma as well, but I didn't want to play Tacoma until I played Gone Home. So that was just off the cards for a while. And then eventually I played Gone Home on stream last year because I got a little bit bolder, and it's a little bit less scary when you're actually have people in chat and stuff. It eases off the vibes a bit. So I played that last year, really enjoyed it. And I would have played Tacoma straight after if I didn't start with the longer games. It's just one of those things where it got stuck on the backlog. And I played Tacoma for the first time just last week, I think.
Yeah, right on. So yeah, Gone Home, sneaky, scary game. Like, I don't hear people ever talk about how scary it was. I was terrified when I was playing Gone Home.
So scary.
I'm glad that I'm not by myself there. I played Tacoma pretty soon after I played Gone Home for the first time, which would have been kind of like you after several years break from playing a lot of games. I picked up a Switch, I think, at that time, and like Googling like best games on Switch, and Gone Home was on those lists. So I played that, and then I found out they have another game that was out. And when I got a PS4, I don't remember if I bought this or if it was on PS Now, as it used to be called, but I played this pretty soon after playing Gone Home. And I don't remember why exactly. I just think it was like, oh, I liked Gone Home a lot. I also liked Firewatch and What Remains of Edith Finch and other walking sims. So I picked this up for some reason and played it. And then this was always on that list of like people who do podcasts like mine, where you're doing like a different game every week, or every 2 weeks or something like that. I feel like we all have like a break glass in case of emergency, like, oh fuck, I need a really short game to play to fill an episode. And this was always one that I'd be like, it'd be really interesting to do an episode. It's really short, so I can just save it for when I need, an extra game. And that situation came up. So I was like, Tacoma. And pretty quickly, we both agreed on doing Tacoma on the show here. And I'm glad that I replayed it, first of all, but I'm also glad that we're doing the episode, because I still really enjoyed the story playing it this time. It's just like the little bit of extra gameplay in Tacoma, as opposed to a Gone Home, for example, adds a lot and really helps you get to know the characters. And I would find myself like, when you have the group of characters together and they all break off and you have to choose who you're going to follow, I would find myself like, I'm going to follow this character first because I really like them. I want to know how they're dealing with this. So I enjoyed the characters. I like the story a lot. And I found it a little bit more interesting as I just feel like the capitalist hell world gets worse every single year. And that's one of the big themes of Tacoma, is talking about that stuff. So revisiting it after several years was interesting for sure. So I'm glad to replay this. I think this game is really good. If you're into a walking sim or something like that.
Agreed. Very much agreed. It feels very apt of a game. Like, I suppose it would have been previously, but even more so now. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Did you have any other like top level thoughts here for the top of the show before we dig in proper?
Yeah. So, obviously we don't want to talk too much about Gone Home. You've already done an episode about that, but
right.
I do want to say that I did. If I am comparing the two, I did enjoy this a lot more than I enjoyed Gone Home. And it's for the same reasons that you kind of mentioned there, where it does have an extra layer to the gameplay. And I feel like I'm a prime target for just a walking sim. I really enjoy just going into an environment and looking around, and Gone Home was great for that. But Tacoma has, obviously we're going to get into it about what the difference of the gameplay is, but I feel like I would put it up there with What Remains of Edith Finch and Firewatch for having, it's not the same as those, but it does its own twist on the walking simulator, which I really, really enjoyed, actually. I possibly even like this kind of gameplay. It might be my favorite kind of storytelling. It reminds me of some other games that I really like too. And I just think it's very clever.
Yeah, definitely is. So we have some stuff to talk about. So we're going to put a pin in how this game works and all that. And we're going to listen to a bit of music from Tacoma. We will come back and we will set up the story. Tacoma was primarily written by Steve Gaynor, and it takes place in a space station named the Tacoma Station. So there's the title of the game. The Tacoma Station is in orbit around Earth, and it serves as a kind of like pit stop station for ships that are going out further into space. You play as a character named Amy, who's voiced by Sarah Grayson, who is tasked by the Venturis Corporation to enter the now abandoned Tacoma station and retrieve any AI logs and the station's AI processing module. So the beginning setup for this game is that the story of Tacoma has already happened, and you are going there to do a very simple job just to retrieve the logs. But during the time when you're going in to pick up these logs, you find out what happened on the station, why it's now abandoned. So the crew of the Tacoma and now Amy are subject to this constant recording by the station AI. Its name is Odin, and this motion surveillance. And one of the capitalist hell world things that you see right away when you enter the station is all of these disclaimer notices and waivers to sign. They're like plastered on. There's like multiple signs and AR displays that load up and everything like that. The sign here, sign here, sign here. You're subject to this. You're subject to this. Okay, all good. Now you can go in the station here. And it kind of sets up okay, we're dealing with this kind of future capitalist world here.
Yeah, it really feels like you are selling your soul away the second that you agree to this. And the thing is, you're not allowed in the ship unless you sign your soul away. So
right.
It already sets the tone that they kind of have everyone wrapped around their finger. You don't really have a choice, even if it's displayed as a choice.
Exactly. Yeah. So because everybody in the ship is subject to this constant monitoring and recording, you will go into different stations, modules in the ship, and you'll be able to load up these recreations of key scenes that happened earlier. And it will load up an AR recreation of characters walking around, talking to each other, and things like that. And this is the gameplay of Tacoma, is you walk into a new section. Each kind of module in the ship is split up into two sections, really, and then you walk in, you load up the recreation, you see the characters standing there, you hit play on this recording, and then you just watch it play out. And like I said earlier, a lot of them will begin with either all the characters together talking and then spreading out. And so you have to follow them around, rewind to get back to the point where they split, follow a different character, or the opposite. Maybe they're all spread out at the beginning, then some characters come together later on. I really like this as a way of delivering a story that has already happened. Like we said, you're doing some archaeology here. You're doing some detective work. And this isn't Amy's job per se. Her job is not to listen to the crew recordings, but this is just what you do while the AI data is being transferred onto your little iPad that she carries around. So I really like this as a way of showing us the story. How did you feel about it?
I absolutely loved it. I think giving you the control of being able to, you are free to walk around as these recordings are playing. So just giving you the control of being able to be okay, do I want to watch this person, that person, being able to follow them, being able to also look around the environment that you're currently in, because these recordings that you're watching are overlaid, kind of. They're not actually there, obviously. So I think giving the player so much control is very clever. You can, it kind of feels like you're directing your own experience. You can, if you want, pick one person and follow them the whole way through. And that's probably the best way to do it so you don't miss anything. But you can also just be ooh, that conversation sounds interesting. I'm going to detour over there. I want to know that first and then come back. And I think it's so good. It really got my my Snoop brain going. I love to snoop around. And I could just I felt like I was tiptoeing around, listening to everyone's conversations. And I think it's really clever the way that they do. I mean, we're not into technical stuff yet, but the way that they do it with the sound design as well is like it's quite proximity based. So
yes, yeah.
If you are stood in a room with all this conversation going on around you, it can get so overwhelming because you can just hear voices everywhere. But if you walk towards the people and listen in a bit better, then you can focus in on them. And it's just, with a snap of a button, you can just rewind and listen again if you missed something. Very, very cool. I really liked it.
Yeah, it is awesome how because like these spaces are not that big that all of these people are sharing. So a lot of times you will be maybe following two characters as they talk in a hallway, and they'll pass two other characters that are talking amongst themselves, and you'll get that little like snippet of that other conversation. And it's usually, I found the writing and dialogue, especially in here, to be interesting enough that I always wanted to hear the conversations. And you mentioned something that's totally true and cool too, which is you are seeing the station in the present and you are watching recordings from the past. So let's say there's like something broken in the environment. A lot of times the scene that you watch will show you how that thing gets broken during the recording that you see. So it's always kind of cool to see a recording and be like, is that foam from a fire extinguisher? Like, how did that get there? And then the scene you watch will show you, like, maybe there was something happening here. Someone had to break out a fire extinguisher.
Exactly. Like the first scene as well. Like, well, it all just provides an extra context that you maybe don't have from the video, knowing that basically this is how the place was left. So, like, for example, in the scene that we're going to talk about where the start of the story. Hold on, this isn't spoilers, is it?
No.
Basically, it's a party, and
yeah,
we're seeing them set up the party, but we're walking around an environment that has clearly already had a party. So it's just got this, for me, a little bit of mental gymnastics going on about. Hold on a second, this is in the past, and it tells you how long ago as well, which is very useful for building this timeline in your head. But yeah, I loved it. It was just so good. It was just good.
For sure. So let's talk a little bit about how these are presented too. So like you said, they're overlaid on the real environment, and the different characters are shown with these color-coded holograms. They have the shapes of real people, but there are no details. You can't see anybody's face. You can't see anybody's clothes that they're wearing. It's just these solid color holograms. There's like a little, not quite like a skeleton, inside of them, but these lines that are going out. So there are purple, blue, yellow, red, green, and orange characters that you'll follow around, which helps you keep track of everybody. There's not a lot of characters, and it's not a very long game. So matching names to colors is really useful for differentiating who's who, but also reminding you, like, these two people are always together. So it's notable that they're together, or maybe that they're not. So real quick, the characters' voice acting, I think, is really, really good. And I want to shout it out because there is no other detail other than a solid color to represent a character. The voice acting has to do all the work of emotion. I mean, the characters, they gesture and stuff during the scenes too, but it's not, it does as much as it can. Like, someone throws their arms up because they're exasperated or whatever, but that's all that the animations can really give you. The voice acting does the work of like really conveying the emotions, because as we'll set up here in a second, they are in a very emotional situation in the ship. So I wanted to shout out the voice actors, and then I'll turn it over to you here. The AI named Odin, again, voiced by Carl Lumbly. There is the station administrator, Evie St. James, voiced by Dawn Lewis. Operations specialist, Clive Siddiqui, voiced by TJ Ramini. Network specialist, Natalie Kuroshenko, voiced by Natasha Loring. Engineer Roberta, they call Bert in the game, Bert Williams, voiced by Abigail Marlowe. The medic, Sarah Hazmati, voiced by Ava Ladere. Hopefully I'm saying that right. The botanist, Andrew Dagyab, voiced by Greg Chun. And then there's a cat named Margaret Catwood, which is fantastic. Great name for a cat. So wanted to shout out the names of the voice actors because this is an emotional situation that this characters are in, and the voice acting has to be good, and it is good.
It's so good. I think it's really clever the way that they've done it because, as you said, like, despite the fact that we've never seen these people in their full self, I feel like you really get a sense of them and you really get to feel them as a person. They have their colors, but also like it's really refreshing. They're all different like shapes and sizes, different heights, different weights. Like they just look like real people. There's men and women, and it's just like very diverse. And what else I like about it is like you get this silhouette of them. We see photographs of the faces, we hear the voices, we see their mannerisms, and that all comes together to just build these characters as well as the stuff in the environment that you pick up about them as well. Mm-hmm. And I just think they've done an expert job. Like, I don't know if the reason for the colors and outlines and stuff is like a technical one. Like, it's hard to make real looking people. But if it is or if it isn't, I think it's better this way because it leaves a bit to the imagination as well.
Yeah, definitely for, an independent studio, it's, well, for any studio, it takes time and money and a lot of work to make, like you said, realistic character models and, animations and facial expressions and lip syncing and everything like that. And by doing this kind of abstracted presentation with these, just these solid colors for the characters, no facial animations at all or anything like that, they save themselves some time and it fits in with the, AR recreation presentation of these conversations. Yeah.
Yeah. There's one other thing as well about the character models is when you consider what they are the recording that Venturis owns, basically their data, and the other identifying thing about them is they have a logo on of their function. So like we're not seeing them as people, or the company isn't necessarily seeing them as people. This is data of their functions, and it's like another telling thing about the corporation. And I don't know, I found it quite interesting.
Yeah, so you see on the screen when you're playing Tacoma, you see the characters out in the environment, and then there's a timeline down on the bottom of the screen for each scene. And the timeline will show you, how far you are into this scene. They're not that long. Most of them are, maybe 5 minutes tops, but you'll rewind and watch different sections as characters split off. And then one thing you can do during all of these is whenever a character opens up their own AR, virtual computer screen, you can pause the video that you're watching and go over and click on their screen in the recreation, and you can read some emails. You can read, text messages. If they're, reading something on the internet, you can read that. So you get to know what are these characters. They're up there doing their job. But a lot of these scenes take place that you're watching, some of them before the disaster that we're going to talk about. And then, afterwards, people are still having conversations with loved ones and stuff like that. So you get to read that, and it gives you a window into what does this character care about? What's going on in their personal life? Aside from this big thing we're going to talk about here in a second. But as you said, on the timeline, when there is an AR, computer screen to go check out, maybe read some emails, it's noted by that symbol representing their function on this, on the station. So yeah, it is like you said, this is how the company views them. Andrew is the botanist. That is his function, and that's all they need him for. That's all they care about is, can he grow plants? So
yeah, basically. Not very nice.
Yeah. So we've hinted at it. Here's what is kind of the inciting event in Tacoma, and then we'll cut, spoiler talk after what the characters are dealing with here. But in the first scene recreation that you see, the first 10 minutes of the game is hearing what's going on. They are having a party for what's called Obsolescence Day, which is a holiday that marks humanity's defeat of a plan to replace everybody who works out in space with robots, because a union intervened and made it so that people could keep their jobs out here in space. So they celebrate this day. It's called Obsolescence Day. And they're getting ready for this party when suddenly they find out that the Tacoma station was hit by a meteor, which drastically cuts the oxygen supply on the station before, to the point where they do not have enough oxygen to wait until someone comes to rescue them. They don't think they're going to be able to get a pickup in the 50 hours of oxygen that the station has left. So what's going on in these scenes a lot of times is the characters are, it seems pretty realistic, like astronauts are trained for contingencies and quick problem solving and things like that. So these characters are set to figure out, what can we do? Like, how can we survive this? Because rescue might be coming. Communications are also cut off too. That's the other part. So rescue might be coming, but we don't know. We have to take matters into our own hands here. And so they have to make a plan. And so you'll get to see them making their plan and see how it plays out. But also, you get to see them deal with this in like their private or sometimes not private moments. People have, understandably, a lot of emotions that come up in such a desperate situation. So this is the inciting event. And I thought that, again, it's really well done. And both sides of that, seeing how they make their plan, seeing how they do their jobs as people who work in space. Each of these characters has their own specialty on the station. So how are they going to use their skills to help the group survive? That's good. And then again, seeing how they emotionally deal with the fact that they might all die in 2 days is also really well done here.
Yeah, it's so good. I think you've basically said everything that I can think of without going into the spoilers. I think that
Fair.
If that sounds interesting to you at all, like, just go ahead and play it straight away, because it really hits home. It's about the people. It is about the people, like, even more so than the situation. And I don't know how much more else to say except from it's about the people and it's good.
One of the big themes that's explored here through the the situation that the characters find themselves in. We've already talked about this hyper-capitalist theme to the game and anti-capitalist theme. But one of the other ones is friendship and love. There are relationships on board among the crew members, and courage. All of these things that come up in the face of a dangerous, life-threatening situation. And there is the whole range of emotions here. There are people who handle this with, strong leadership skills and strong problem solving. And there are people who are really trying, but really having a hard time with this. And like, they put on a brave face and do their job, but when they have quiet moments, they're freaking the fuck out. And it all feels very real to not just have them be superheroes all the time. It does feel very human.
Yeah, that is the beauty of this. The setup of the gameplay is like, you see them link together and have a chat for a few minutes, and then if you rewind and see what the person was doing 10 seconds before they walked out the door, maybe they were in the back room having a panic attack, and then they managed to pull it together and come back out, and it's just so real. It's really good. Yep.
Very good. And one other thing, just to mention, a little tease for a theme that we'll talk about more in the spoiler section, is since there is an AI on board, this game does talk about AI in several different ways. So I mentioned there's an AI character named Odin, and then there is also the capitalist view of how to best use AI. We said they're celebrating a holiday where the unions have defeated a push to replace all the people with AI robots out in space. So obviously they're going to dig into that a little bit more in the game and then explore how the AI character functions, we'll say, in this emergency situation that they found themselves in. And it's interesting because this game came out in, what did I say, 2017, 2019, 2017. 7 years later, playing this, I think that our views on AI have been forced to change and evolve pretty rapidly within the last 3 to 5 years, and especially in the last couple years here. So it's interesting seeing, not that 2017 was ancient, but seeing how they thought this would play out in the future, at least in the context of this story, and then kind of like comparing with how it actually is in the real world right now. Really interesting to see this, and I'm excited to talk about this one in the spoiler section for sure.
Yeah, me too. I don't know if we mentioned that the story of the game is set in like 2088, so it's like quite into the... It's not a near future, it's like a mid-future. So it's kind of, if you think about, like you say, I didn't realize 2017 was that long ago. Time is flying. But if you think about, like you say, the change between now and then, I found it very interesting to consider how realistic this game's story may seem between now and 2088. I think I want to be around in 2088 when the podcasts start coming out about, a reflection on how accurate Tacoma was from the old ancient people who made it. So, I can't wait to talk a little bit more about the AI stuff as well.
Yep. There's a lot. This is going to be a very short non-spoiler section because we've basically covered, what the story setup is, who these people are, what these people are dealing with, and we've talked about the mechanics of Tacoma. One other thing I guess to mention is that going through this space station is just really, I would say it's less atmospheric than the house in Gone Home, but it is still an atmospheric, interesting place to explore and, look in the characters' living quarters and see, because they're out on this, this contract work out in the, out in space. And they all have their own private places, but it is a small place. And you can learn, what I'm trying to say is you can learn more about the characters' lives than the story cutscene or like recreations will give you too, if you take that extra time like you did on your streams to really dig around, look at what they have in their rooms. Everyone's got different, reading material in their bathroom, for example. I thought that was an interesting, characterization touch here. So it is a cool place to explore around and see, what's written on the whiteboards. What are these people have in their rooms? Each wing is dedicated to a certain function and one person is in charge of that area. So like, how are they running the place? Stuff like that. So before we get into the spoiler section and the, the housekeeping and stuff before that, we always like to answer the question, who would you recommend to play Tacoma? And if you have any kind of closing thoughts about it, now is the time for that too.
I think that Tacoma should be played by anyone who enjoys environmental storytelling. Like, as you were just saying, there is so much attention to detail in this environment. So if you do want to spend the extra time, you can. And I personally think it's worth it, but I suppose if you don't want that and you just want a breezy story to, like, say, instead of having a movie night, have a game night with a short narrative story, it also is good for that. And then finally, I would say I think this is a fun one to play with other people. You know how sometimes people either have a partner who doesn't play games or just has someone you want to share the experience with. I feel like this is the kind of game where you can sit together and all like on stream like I did and you can both like point things out. You can be like, rewind that a bit and see what they just said, and theory craft as you go. And I think this is a really good one for that too. Maybe more so than the average walking sim, based on the ability that you have to rewind and fast forward.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is like a very slight increase in gameplay. Just the ability to rewind, pause, fast forward a scene while you're walking around doing your normal walking sim stuff. But it is like that much more interesting as a play experience too, because you get to choose, who do I want to follow? Like, you don't have to follow people if you don't want to. You can just watch the scene to completion, then go pick up your little tablet and then leave. But I think that most people are going to find themselves interested by the characters and stuff like that. So that does add a little bit of like engagement and choice, and like, how do I want to approach this, more so than, just walking around as you listen to dialogue or something like in another walking sim would have. So I think this is a pretty easy recommendation for a lot of people. Like, I can't even say that if you don't like walking sims, don't play this, because you do have stuff to do and a game to control and stuff like that. I really think this is a pretty easy recommendation for a lot of people to play. It's short, it's cheap now. It's just got a lot going for it as far as recommending it to people. And we kind of, we purposely didn't go too far with where the story goes, but it is really interesting where the story goes. And I loved, again, seeing how these characters deal with the situation that they're placed in. And again, spoiler section is going to be full of that chat. So easy recommendation for a lot of people. Yeah. So before spoilers, we always do housekeeping and talk about the things that the guest is doing first. So Noob, as I said at the top, you do streaming, you write, you make things on YouTube from time to time. So tell people a little bit more about that and where they can find you.
Okay, yeah. So I primarily stream on Twitch twice a week. That's my main thing that I do, I would say now, but I do kind of rotate. I try and do too much. There's not enough time to do all of the things, but basically, yeah, Twitch streaming.
I can relate, yeah.
Yeah, we need more hours, we need more days. So on Twitch, I stream a variety of games. I tend to like narrative-focused games, indie and AAA, really. Like the big thing we just did recently was finish the Mass Effect trilogy, which took quite a long time. If you consider that I took 9.5 hours to play this game, imagine how long it took me to play the Mass Effect trilogy. Right. But that was my first time. That was my first time playing that. And basically the idea is I'm catching up on all the games that I missed during that period of not playing games. And going through my backlog, just like you are. So yeah. It's not necessarily certain types of games. It's just play what we feel. And although once I start something, I like to try and make sure I finish it at least. And then I have my website, which is CtrlAltNoob.com. And that's where I do all sorts, really. The main thing I do on there is demo impressions. I like to dip in and keep up to date with like indie games that are releasing. And particularly during Steam Next Fest weeks and stuff like that, I like to play as many demos as I can and then write about the ones that had something about them that made me inspired to try and help put them onto other people's radars. So, but I've also done reviews on there. I do photography and video games when there's a photo mode and put like albums up on there. It's a blog, but it's like I try and be professional about it.
Yeah, for sure.
And yeah, I have fun doing it as well. And then there's my YouTube channel too, which at the moment is mostly just the Twitch VODs, but I do occasional Let's Plays. Like I intend to do some more Let's Plays hopefully next year. And I have a Christmas series. I did a Christmas series over the holidays called 12 Days of Epic Games, where I tried 12 different, so over the 12 days of Christmas, I tried 12 different games that I got on giveaways, just like Tacoma, actually. I tried each one for like an hour or two and decided whether I wanted to continue them. So that's quite a big series, but it's fun to dabble in different games. And I think that's most of what I do, I think.
Yeah.
There's probably other stuff too.
Yeah, said like it's not a lot of stuff. I know how it goes. Like I'm like, oh well, I guess that's all. That's all I do, but it's actually a lot. Yeah. So the streams are fun. I like to tune in when you're streaming if I can. You have a good energy on the streams that I appreciate. So it's fun to tune into those. And then the writing is good. I remember reading about your after you played 1,000 times Resist and reading that and just being like, okay, this is really good. And then I always love reading about demos too. Yeah, that's such a good game. And then the photography you mentioned, you had been sharing kind of semi-recently stuff from Shadow of the Colossus photo mode, which is a beautiful game. And then if you take the time to like set up shots and stuff like that, it's really good. So a lot of stuff that I would recommend people check out that you're doing out there. And I'll make sure to put links to everything that you have down in the show notes so people can find it easily. But yeah, a lot of stuff to check out.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And then for this podcast, little housekeeping for me personally, not personally, well, somewhat. I've lost the train here. Housekeeping for Tales from the Backlog. Please consider joining the Discord server if you have enjoyed the episode. If you're not a member, you can come in, talk about Tacoma with us this week. You can also talk about the games you're playing. You can, share pictures of your pets, general life stuff, talk about the other games you're playing. It's a lively and welcoming, fun community. It's a place I love to spend a lot of time in online. So there's an invite link down in the show notes for the Discord server. You can support the show. Tell a friend if you've enjoyed this. That's a good way to introduce new people to the show. You can leave a rating and review if you are listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Podcast Addict. Likes and comments on YouTube also help boost the show so new people find it. And that's what we want. You can listen to my other podcast called A Top 3 Podcast, where we do top 3 lists. It is a more comedy show than this, so it's very different. And then last but not least, if you want to support monetarily, you can sign up at patreon.com/RealDaveJackson. And there are a bunch of perks for people who do that, and their support means the world to me. But if you're just listening to 45 minutes or so into a podcast, that is all the support that I need, really. I appreciate everybody who's listening. So we are going to take a break, and when we come back, it will be full spoiler time for Tacoma. All right, before we get to spoilers for Tacoma, I would like to give a shout out to the wonderful folks over on Patreon who help support the show. Big shout out to Chris Nelson, the Top 3 Podcast crew, Zulgeek, Chris Copleen, Eric Guess, Rick Firestone, Nick Ficori, Jill, Soccer, Cupcake, Kyle, Christian S., Matt aka Stormageddon, JD, Doug Leaf, Jason Emery, Brian Skirsha, Randall, Jake Martin, Jenny E., Marcus O'Neill, David Stecco, Stefan, William Prentice, Drellish, Rob Smith, and a new patron. Welcome in, Mark. Thank you all so much for your support. It means the world to me, and if you're listening to this and you'd like to support the show, as this is a listener-supported show, you can do that at patreon.com/RealDaveJackson. Now, with all that being said, it's time to go full spoilers on Tacoma. All right, we're back, and it's full spoiler time for Tacoma. And as always, we're not doing a linear walk through the story. So if you don't want to be spoiled on the end of Tacoma, please get out as soon as possible, because free spoiler time in here. So we talked about the meteor impact that sets the crew on this desperate plan or desperate situation where they need to make a plan to escape. So what they decide eventually is, again, they've kind of like all but one of them thinks that waiting for rescue is not the best option. So they come up with this, and the other, I think it's Andrew, who would rather wait for rescue because he's scared of their new plan, which is they are going to put the non-essential crew members into cryo sleep, people who would not be directly building and working on this new plan to escape, simply because less people awake means less oxygen being consumed, and more time to work on the plan. So Evie, Clive, and Andrew are going to go into cryosleep. Sarah is going to help them do it. And then I think she's going to go into cryosleep as well after they're down. And that leaves 2 people, Nat and Bert, to work on their new plan, which is to retrofit this delivery drone to fit them inside and then pilot this down to the moon. This is not what this thing was built for, though. So there is a big risk in doing this. They're basically like creating a spaceship out of something that was never supposed to hold people.
Yeah, it feels like a huge task. They talk about it and they list all the things that they need to do. Like, it's not radiation protected. It's not like, it's not got life support systems. Like, it's probably not even like sealed like an airplane is, never mind a spaceship. So I think they really have their work cut out, considering the time just keeps ticking away. But something that I wanted to mention about this plan is that it's about the cryosleep. So if you think of cryosleep in most like sci-fi stories, it's this like magical freezer that they can go into and then they can wake up in 100 years or 1,000 years and the world is all different and they're alive and fine. But this is actually a type of cryosleep I've never seen in fiction before, but it feels so much more realistic and it really adds to the stakes of what is happening. Because it's like basically in one of the scenes where Andrew is talking to Sarah, the medic, they're discussing it. This is how you find out what it's like. And basically it feels like going to sleep. But what it actually is, it just like, it lowers your body temperature into like a hypothermic state. So obviously it'll slow down your systems and stuff, so that you can, I guess, use less energy, live in, I kind of understood it to be like kind of how animals hibernate. It feels like that. However, there's only like a safe period. And even then, it's not that safe. If you have health conditions, it's dangerous. But there is a safe period of like, I think she said 72 hours or something like that. And then from then on, your body just starts shutting down because it's so cold and it doesn't work anymore. And we're not built for it. So basically, cryosleep at its best is only a temporary measure and it's only supposed to be used in emergencies. And the fact that Evie, I think it's Evie that originally comes up with the plan and she just like immediately volunteers. She's like, this is what we need to do. You guys need as much time as possible to be able to pull this off. So we're going to go straight in there. And the thing is, it's not even just the cryosleep that's dangerous. It's like the waking up part of it that is the dangerous part. And they voluntarily enter that early to give them more time. It's just like, my heart was racing about it all. I was like, they're so brave and just really going straight into problem solving mode. And it's such a credit to the team on the ship. But I feel like we'll get into that a little bit more later too. But I just wanted to mention, like, this is a heavy situation. I mean, it's already a heavy situation. But then when you consider you can understand why Andrew is so hesitant and scared. Yeah, for sure. I'm glad you brought that up because, like, you're right. I can't think of another sci-fi story that I've watched where cryosleep is presented as dangerous at all. It is just like, I watched Alien the other day and it's just like you go in and you lay down and you wake up, months, years later and everything. There's not even like a period of, reacclimating or something. They just kind of like wake up from a very deep sleep and then they're fine. And that happens in Interstellar as well. Like, it is presented in a much more scientifically realistic way, we'll say here. At least with like, you can suspend disbelief in those other stories. I'm not trying to say that like, that's a problem with Alien or something like that. But in this, when you have these characters in this desperate situation, and one of the things that I really like about what this game explores in such a short time is how they deal with this,
deal with the plan, how they deal with the situation that they're in. And like you said, Andrew's like really scared about this. He's worried that he's going to die in cryosleep. And he talks to Sarah about like, okay, so if it does go wrong, is it going to hurt? Like when I die in there, what's it going to feel like? And she's like, it won't hurt. You just won't wake up. You'll go to sleep and then you won't wake up. And that kind of like, I mean, it doesn't relieve his stress about it, but it is kind of like, if there's anything going for it, it's the fact that it's not going to be a painful death if that's how you die, as opposed to, you know, a lack of oxygen on the station would be a worse way to die, I think.
Yeah.
So
yeah, definitely.
The way that the crew kind of handles this is really interesting, and I wanted to talk about this. So you mentioned Evie. She's the leader on the station. She's the chief of staff or whatever they called it on there. So she takes charge and she kind of like helps develop the plan. And then when it's like, she's non-essential after this, her skills are not helpful for getting this drone ready for space flight. So she's like, yeah, like you said, like she makes this decision. She and Clive go into cryosleep very quickly. And you just get one conversation, I think, with the two of them talking to each other about this. And I think Evie is a bit more pragmatic about the situation. She's like, you know, rescue's not coming to get us. This is dangerous. This is a risk. There is a chance that I will, because she and Clive are in a relationship on board. She and Clive, and then Nat and Bert are in a relationship together. So two couples on the crew. And she talks to Clive about how, like, I may never see you again after we go down for cryosleep, and we need to prepare for that fact. And Clive is a bit more hopeful and romantic about the situation. He kind of lets her know that, like, I'm just going to choose to hold out hope that this is not the end for us here. But those are the first two to go down, and they handle it with a real sense of like leadership and grace about it. That it's good to see them do that, and then see the other characters struggle a bit more with it afterwards.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, you can see they also struggle too. Like, obviously, you have that scene of the pair of them talking to each other, and like Evie isn't super hopeful. And I mean, probably she has a lot of the contact with the company, so she maybe doesn't have very much faith in the company.
Right.
Whereas Andrew still has this like hope that the company is gonna help them, because he has this like, throughout his entire story, you can see he has this trust in the company. He is very well into their loyalty system. And it's I don't know if I would call him naive, maybe, or desperate. It's maybe a mixture of the two. But you can even see that he is just the biggest thing given him. One of the biggest things given him pause is the fact that he thinks, oh, they'll probably come. And Evie's like, we can't wait for that. Like, they probably are not. And if we wait, there's no going back. We can't bring the oxygen back. But I thought it was cool that so they all go into cryo once their usefulness has run out. So the thing that Andrew does as the botanist before he goes in is like causes an algae bloom, which then gives them a bit of extra oxygen. And I thought, that's so clever. Like, because as the botanist, like, there's a lot of jobs as a botanist on the spaceship that I would never have thought of. But like, one of them is like helping with the oxygen levels, and it just makes sense. And everyone has their role to play. And once he's done his, then he goes in too. Yeah,
for sure. He's the one of everyone on the crew. He's the one that's freaking out the most about the situation. And I think he has at least one conversation with Odin where he's just kind of talking about the situation and like maybe looking for reassurance. And like Odin's very dry when he talks with the crew members, and he doesn't quite give him the assurance that he was looking for. And then that's the scene where they're down under the they're in like the botany area underneath it. And Sarah walks in and Andrew's like, I can't do this. I can't do any of this. This is too much. And it just felt very real to see a character like lose it for a second, because even with, and I don't know how these characters, like what their training is like, but I know that like real astronauts have to be, they're like rigorously tested and evaluated for like psychological and physical capabilities under stress, right? I don't know what it's like for these people, but it is, you always think like, oh, these are professionals. They can handle any situation that's thrown at them. But it is very real to me, put yourself in their shoes, to be like, you have 2 days to live. How are you mentally going to process that? And the answer for a lot of them, or for all of them in like their own different ways, is like, for some of them, especially Andrew, is not processing it very well, freaking the fuck out sometimes. Yeah. It feels real.
Yeah. I think this scene in particular really highlights what you're saying about them getting, going through it in their own ways, but then they also come back together to each other, because I think it's, if you follow Sarah around in this scene, she goes down to comfort Andrew in this moment, and then when she leaves, she goes into a room by herself, and then she starts melting down. Now that she's done her job as the medic and comforter and friend, and now she goes away and has her meltdown. And then when she comes back, like Odin helps her through that. When she comes back out, she bumps into Evie and Clive, who are on their way to go and get frozen. So like,
she has
like everyone.
She has to supervise them going into cryosleep. And it was, I remember now, it was Odin talks her through a panic attack. Yeah. Like right after she helps talk to Andrew about like, I know this is hard, but we all have to stick together. We all have to do our jobs here to help everybody out. And then she goes out, immediately has a panic attack. Odin talks her down, and then she's like, okay, time to go back to work. And then, goes to help Evie and Clive go down. And like you said, again, like she might be putting them down to their deaths with going into cryosleep here.
Yeah, it's such a, like, well, I was going to say a huge responsibility, but I mean, they're all kind of making their own decisions right now. They've all kind of consented to it because they don't really have another choice. It's basically, they know that if they're going to get through this, they need to rely on each other, and they need to make decisions for themselves because no one else is going to. And it's just, it's so good. Like, it's like you said, the way that it all, this is, I think, the heart of the story, is the way that they do come together. There's some more that I want to say on that later, so I'm going to put a pin in that actually. But sure. Okay.
So then the other part of the group that we haven't talked about yet is Nat and Bert, who are in charge of actually fitting this this drone and making it flyable. Like you said, there's so many things that would make this like not work, or so much work to do to make it flyable. And I think Odin at one point says like, if you get the radiation shields up, and if you get life support, and if you're able to manually pilot this and all of that, then you have like a 90% chance of making this thing work as a space vessel. Not like a 90% chance of landing safely on the moon, just like a 90% chance that it will work as a vessel. And like you have all of these intense calculations and stuff, I'm sure, to manually pilot something in space and land it on, a moving object out in outer space. So it's a desperate plan, and they share a couple of moments between the two of them because they're together also. They share a couple of moments together where they're like, this might be the last time we see each other. So I think this is the one where like Nat runs and like jumps up into Bert's arms and like knocks her down, and they like start kissing on the ground. And that's like, they're kind of like the difference between them and then Clive and Evie, where they have like this very adult conversation about it, and Nat and Bert are just like well, we don't have that much time left. Let's have a little fun for a second, and then let's get back to work.
Yeah, she just absolutely leaps on her.
Yeah.
It's funny if you did things in a different order and you listen to the conversation in the other room first, you'll just hear the crash and you'll be like, oh, no, what's happened in that room? And then you go and walk in and you're like, oh, okay, I see what's going on here.
The crash is from them falling into a wall and like breaking something that was like leaning up on the wall or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah. And then their plan fails eventually too. They're trying to work on that drone, install some stuff on like the exterior of it, and there's an explosion, which really injures Bert, and Nat gets hurt too, but Bert is like, I think she's unconscious during that part. So eventually, like, we have all these people that are on board for this plan, and this plan doesn't work. They're not able to get this thing space-worthy. Seaworthy would be for going in the water. Space-worthy, we'll say. And that's with not that much time left on their oxygen countdown. And so that's like the moment of desperation in the story. A lot of these like later game scenes that are, I don't know how I was going to say this. It puts Sarah kind of in the point of view of like the main character later on, where like for a while it was just like you follow everyone as they do their jobs. Sarah is the one who is kind of like the connecting piece between everybody because she has to get everyone into cryosleep. Then she has to go take care of Bert and Nat after this explosion. Then Odin gets involved and Sarah is the one who does that stuff too. But just like as you're going through this story, what was your feeling on like, do you think they're going to make it? What about this plan? And then like when there's this explosion, what was the feeling for you? Because I can't remember how I felt back 5 years ago when I played it. I knew how the story went when I replayed this. What was it like for you?
Okay, yeah. So for me, and something I forgot to mention in the non-spoiler bit is like, it very much felt like a mystery game to me as well, where, I mean, I suppose at the pace that I played it as well, it left a lot of time to do the theory crafting and think like, oh, what's going to happen next and stuff. And like I mean, I had this dread the whole time because I was like, I don't see how they can possibly get all this stuff done. Like, even if they have 50 hours or whatever, well, even if it's like the 72 hours before people start dying in the cryo sleep, how can they possibly do this huge task? Then obviously it was taken out of their hands by the big explosion anyway. But for me, I thought that the people were going to be in cryo sleep, currently, like as us as Amy are walking around the spaceship shuttle thing, I forgot what it's, station. I was pretty sure that all of these people were going to be in the cryopods. That was kind of shaken a little bit by the fact that we found out that Nat would be a very bad candidate for going into the cryopods because during her like medical, they found she had like a heart murmur or something, which meant she would be very unlikely to wake up, which is a whole nother plot point. But and another weight on Sarah's shoulders. But so then that kind of turned me off that idea because I was like, well, if she's in there, she's probably not going to wake up. And I feel like this has to not have the really sad, tragic ending because I feel like I would know about it. So that's what I thought going through. I didn't think they were going to succeed, but I didn't think they were all going to die. So I honestly didn't know where it was going to go. Yeah. I was like hanging on to every moment.
I was thinking it would be super bleak and not that I haven't played games like this, but it would be super bleak if you playing as Amy just walked into the room where they're all in cryosleep. And like, I don't think we mentioned this, but Amy's there just a couple days later. Like she's not there months in the future. She's there a couple days after these recordings.
There is still a little bit of oxygen left. That's how soon she is there.
Right. So you could get there at a point, and then knowing what you know about like this cryosleep, you could get there at a point where it's like, these people are still alive in there, but like how alive are they? You know, like you could get into that situation. And then you did bring up something I forgot to write in the notes, the choice that Sarah makes to lie to Nat about her prognosis of waking up from cryosleep. She tells Nat that she'll be fine. And it's an ethical thing that we see, I feel like, a lot with stories about doctors or, you know, just general decision makers in times of crisis, to choose to lie in order to give someone the best chance for survival, or to give them hope, even if it's not the best chance for survival. Not the best chance for survival for her, but for the group, we'll say.
Yeah.
It's in their best interest if Nat continues to work well and believe in the plan, even if she might die if she goes into cryosleep herself.
That's it. I think time was so short that she didn't want to have another mental overhead on Nat when she needed to be focused on the job. And if the job failed, they were all going to die anyway, as horrible as that is. And it was presented like it's part of Sarah's job to get them all into cryosleep, because that is the procedure of what they have to do.
Yeah, company
because
mandate.
Of the company,
Yeah.
That if like an emergency such as this happens, they have to go into cryo. So she just decided, like, well, it was, she literally says it's just more humane for her to die that way than it is for her to be the only one out of cryo sleep, just suffocating on this dead station.
Yeah. Again, of the possible ways that people could die in the story, going to sleep and then not waking up and dying a painless death is the best one. So it is an ethical dilemma on Sarah's part to not tell Nat the truth, but it is one that you can easily see the rationale for sure.
Yeah, she says to Odin, like, if we do get out of here, Nat's going to have to find out eventually that I lied to her. And Odin was like, that is a bridge that you can cross when you get to it. It's like, it's pretty good advice, actually, because, I mean, there's no, I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer to that dilemma, but she had to make the choice in that moment. And she was trying to do the best for everyone involved. I did remember something else that kind of contributed to my theory crafting as we were going, and that's to do with what we were talking about earlier, about how we are seeing the current state of the station as opposed to how it was when they were there. I had noticed in the medical bay, one of the stretchers was missing, and then as you go down into engineering, the stretcher is there at the bottom of the lift, and I was like, why is this stretcher here? And then obviously you go through the story and you can see straight away, you see how injured Bert gets. So then I could put the connection together, being like, oh, they're going to stretch her out. And then obviously once they get into zero gravity in the central area, then it's a bit easier to move around. So I kind of managed to put that, I don't know how well I put it together, but I thought there was going to be a disaster as soon as I entered because the stretcher was there. And I was like, we were looking for this earlier, because like I was just looking at all the environment and you could see like the track marks on the floor of where they'd gone. And I was like, oh yeah. So just, I guess most people maybe wouldn't think about that, but it's there if you want it. And that's one of the things I love about the setup of being there post-event, and it's already happened.
Yeah, I didn't catch that for sure. That's a good catch. So you could reasonably assume that somebody got hurt at some point and then maybe put together that like they made it out into that 0G section.
I thought potentially into the cryosleep pods is where they would have ended up. That's how I ended up down that track.
Yeah. Well, if she's not healthy enough to work on the solution, then put her in cryosleep and save oxygen for the people who can, maybe. So
yeah.
But that's not how it goes. And I'm glad you mentioned Odin's kind of decision making and chatting with people, because what actually does happen here is I think that a lot of stories that we experience, sci-fi stories where they have AI on board, think of, well, not 2001, because that's an evil AI that's trying to kill everybody, but like the one in Alien. others around that I'm blanking on right now, where the AI is just kind of like a neutral tool out there and like doesn't really make decisions for itself. It will do as it's programmed. And one other thing to mention is Nat, who is the like systems engineer, has had no access to the AI per the company's mandate, because they're all contractors and contractors are not allowed to access the AI. So keep that in mind for what happens here. But Odin, I think we're lulled into like a false sense of like, yeah, Odin is this sounding board for the people on the crew. They can talk to Odin about their problems. Odin is trained to help talk someone through a panic attack. Odin can give advice, but Odin doesn't make decisions for Odin until that's not actually the case. And that's feels like an interesting take on a benevolent AI. It's the opposite of Hal from 2001. Odin is as much of a hero in this story as any of the people are. And I wanted to get your take. Do you think this is because, I think it was with Nat, someone, when they gave Odin like a fresh new AI to the crew on the Tacoma, and Odin had to go through these mental exercises with, again, I think it was Nat. Nat kind of like was pretty loosey-goosey with those, and I think may have introduced a bit of free will into Odin's system that shouldn't have been there. And that may be why the company wants Odin, the hardware, wetware they call it, back so much.
Yeah, so I agree. I do think that's exactly what happened. The more that you explore, you start to learn more about the lore of the AIs in this world, of this future, I guess. And like they do have these tests that they run. It seems like it's a yearly test, and you can find the results in Nat's office. And it's like, it's an acronym of like about 7 different traits, and they get like marked on a scale of 0 to 10, I think. And I can't remember what a lot of them are, but like one of them is like efficiency. One of them is, I don't know if it's independence or obedience, one of those two. And you can see the trends on the, not the map, the graph. And the obedience like goes, well, it must go down, I guess. It's like the free will equivalent. You see the trend of it changing over the course of the year with Nat. And like, I don't think we mentioned, Nat is like the rebellious one of the crew.
Right.
She is very much like, doesn't give a shit. She is just here to do the job.
There's this one part late in the game that made me laugh where you're in like this restricted area where people are not supposed to go. And there's a hologram recreation of Nat just like drinking and smoking cigarettes and listening to music in this like totally off limits hallway where it's like, there's like warning signs on the walls where the company is like, we will fucking kill you if you go in here, basically. And it just like, yeah, Nat's in there smoking cigarettes, listening to music. So yeah, rebellious one.
Yeah, she is like the punk, kind of just does what she wants. She doesn't exercise. She just, she's over it. She is so over it.
Yeah.
So where was I going with that?
Sorry, yeah, the independence growing for Odin.
Oh yeah, so Nat had been working with him, like, again, it seems like a yearly report, but we also learn a bit about Odin's past before that, about how someone else had been working with him and trying to create him into someone that was already a person. Did you get that part of it?
I think I missed that, no.
So he was talking to Sarah about it. I think it was in the locker room. And he was talking about his previous handler had like tried to, for want of a better word, like make him imprint someone else's personality. And he thought he'd had really good, like Odin himself thought he'd had really good success with it. And he thought, oh, I'm doing a really good job of replicating this person. But then he never had the same relationship with the handler again after that. And I think it's because that handler, like, obviously it must have probably been a dead loved one, usually.
Yeah.
And
right.
I mean, I think that's a very mistake that you don't realize you're going to make until you've made it, when now this AI is trying to replicate your dead loved one. And
it's that
Odin's
Black Mirror episode about that. Yeah.
Oh, I haven't seen that, but that sounds really good. just uncanny, I guess, for that person. And Odin was just like dejected and like, oh, like we didn't have that bond anymore after that. And then that's Odin's history. So obviously Odin, I think that was what he was saying was one of his biggest growths. And then obviously since then, he then became part of this crew where Nat took him under her wing. Also, Sarah's been incredibly nice to him this entire time. Like she's basically been a friend to him. I think all of these things combined helped to create this this difference in this AI compared to the other AI that we've learned about that also live in this universe in different space stations or in Venturus.
And the one that contacts you, at the end when you were like leaving with Odin, the one that like contacts your ship and is like, these are your instructions, please, deposit the Odin wetware here, return immediately to headquarters or whatever. Like the other ones are super obedient from what you can tell. But Odin has developed a sentience and a free will, basically. And it's not something that like, there's a lot of games and a lot of fiction that like really focuses on the themes of, what makes something human, what makes something sentient, free will versus, your purpose or something like that, which are all common AI themes. But this game just shows you what Odin decided to do and then lets you think about like, this is unusual. This probably shouldn't have happened this way, but this is what happened. And what happened was, Odin decides when things are at their most desperate, it's when the drone thing explodes and the plan is finished. Odin is like, Sarah, there's this off-limits hallway that you might not know about that I think you should go check out. And my programming will not allow me to tell you that you should go check it out. But I certainly wouldn't stop you if you wanted to go check it out. It's like he found a workaround for his programming to tell Sarah, you need to go see this. And that's like the secret of what happened here. And it leads to them being rescued. But it's because Odin went against his programming, developed this free will, and obviously cares for the people on board to the point where he is willing to risk everything to help them out. And Amy, the character you're playing as, is sent to the station, again, not to investigate what happened to the people. Even though we're going to find out, Venturus knows what happened on the station, and they know, like, you're not there to do that discovering. You're not there to gather evidence. You're there to get Odin because Odin went against its programming and needs to be returned to the company for wiping or whatever they're going to plan to do, right? So this is a big risk. I think it's hinted at least when the Carnival ship comes to pick them up. It's hinted at that Venturus doesn't know yet, but they'll find out soon what happened. And then they're going to have, a headache to deal with after that. But all the crew members are like, yeah, we'll deal with that later. Let's get out of here first. So I think that it's like, it can be assumed, and it can also be assumed that Amy's not getting to the station, immediately. It takes some travel time for her to get there.
Yeah.
It can be assumed that they sent Amy on a search and rescue mission of sorts.
It depends.
But not for the people
it depends on
to
how
get
well
that
the
expensive
communications
AI
were working.
back.
All about the assets and the money and
yeah.
Well, I guess it's partly because the AI is expensive and they want it back, and partly because they need to hide the evidence of what they may or may not have done, which they definitely did.
They definitely did, yeah. So let's talk about what they did. So Odin leads Sarah into this room that contains recordings of communications with the Venturus president, Sergio Venturi. So what you find out in there is that we said there was that union intervention that prevented robots from replacing people out in space. And this has really hurt the Venturis Corporation's bottom line. And they're trying to get a new bill passed. And I like it. It feels very smart for this bill to be presented as a human safety bill, when actually what they're trying to do is make operations cheaper for them so they can make more money. And they're building these condos out in low orbit that would be too dangerous for humans to work on. So they need this thing repealed so that robots can do it. And it's hurting their bottom line to not be able to do this. And also Andrew had bought into that, and he was like in a bad financial situation because this is not working the way that he wanted. He cashed in his like company bucks to get in on this. So they did some simulations, calculations, the company did, and found that there were not a lot of things that could happen that could sway public opinion in a way that would favor this bill. But one of the things that could favor it is if there was an accident in space that resulted in the total death of a crew of people. So then they could say, like, you see, these people died in space. If it was robots, there would be no loss of human life. Everything would be fine if it was just robots. So they ordered Odin to explosively decompress the oxygen tanks, say that a meteor hit the station, because the crew can't verify that, and then reduce the oxygen, tell them to all go in cryosleep, and then they'll all die in cryosleep silently so that the outside world will never hear this, and to not tell the people the truth. So Odin found the workaround to not tell them the truth, but just kind of say like, hey, Sarah, back there in that door, there's something that you might find interesting, and the truth is in there. And so this reveal that it's actually Odin going against his programming, helping the crew find the truth out here. And then this lets Sarah open up the communications to send a distress call, and then a passing Carnival cruise ship, because this 2088 Carnival Cruises does space cruises now, so they can come pick them up. And that's how they get rescued. And I just thought this was really interesting. Obviously, super evil corporation here, but like, I don't think it's cartoonishly evil in 64 years. I mean, fuck, if they could do that right now, they would. So it's not too hard to say like, yeah, we'll just cover this up. We will make trillions of dollars if we just get rid of one crew out in space. And the AI can't tell them the truth, so it's a perfect plan.
It is so sickening. I was so angry when I was in this room. So you enter this room, and it's the room that, like, I guess it encases it's where Odin lives. It's like his where his where is, and this is where there was some off-limits data, because Odin still, I guess, seemed to have some sort of communication with the outside, even though most of the comms were down. And like, you can systematically make your way through these different, very revealing documents or whatever, and find out exactly what happened. And like, when your chest just gets like tight because you're so mad. Like, this company is evil, absolutely evil. And we've seen traces of it already. Like, for example, even in the very first scene, when you look into Evie's files, like, they already had issues when back on Earth, when they were creating the space station, about toxic work environments with chemicals, and a lot of people died from it because of bad health and safety, because being safe costs more money. Basically is what happened. So we've already seen that they're quite evil. And one of the people who died in that was Evie's sister. I caught into my brain. I don't know if that's exactly what happened, but I think that's what the clues hint to, because they didn't have the PPE or whatever, what they needed. So they've already made these mistakes. Obviously, they don't care that they made that mistake. And then they set away their own AI calculating these things, all for money, because they've already set away this Venturis Belt project, which is the one with it's like space housing in orbit of Earth, and then people can buy it to then rent it out to other people. So it's all just about the money rolling in. So they've already let people buy shares in this thing. They're already advertising it to be started when it's actually against the law. That's why they really need this desperate measure to change the law. These adverts, by the way, are literally being shown into our brain through the AI as we are like transferring ourselves between sections of the station. It's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. So they ask their AI to like, how can we get this law changed? And obviously they ran all of these, like you said, these simulations. And the one that they came up with was this Tacoma incident. And that to me also kind of relates to the point that we were talking about with Odin, how Odin managed to gain his sentience, basically. I do believe that happened through nurture, because then if you think about this AI, is it Juno?
Yeah, Juno's the one doing the simulations, yeah.
Yeah, so Juno's the one that's coming up with these ideas. Like, now I'm not necessarily believing that this AI is sinister. I think the people that are nurturing it are sinister. And I guess that one is being used more as a tool than anything else. And I think that's why I don't think this story is necessarily pro AI, because I think we have them on either side. This AI is contributing very much to these evil acts of actually killing people just to change a law to make profit. Whereas I don't think it necessarily... They must have just missed the part about never harm a human in the programming of this thing.
Yeah, I guess, well, two things. I don't think that it's outside of the realm of possibility that, let's just say, strategists at Amazon today would not run similar things like this. If Jeff Bezos told them, find a way to get this thing in motion, and run through different scenarios, and some of them might involve human death, innocent lives being lost. I don't think that it's out of the realm of possibility that people would do these calculations too. So it is on the people who told the AI. The other things they tested are like the assassination of government officials, a union strike, any way that they could like manipulate this to sway opinion. So it is on the people doing it for sure. In the AI, the stance on AI is like twofold here, because you have like the individual AI, Odin and Juno and like the others that are involved with these other stations, where I think this game is pretty optimistic about when given the right environment, the AI will basically act as people. Odin makes a sacrifice. Odin surely knows the danger of telling Sarah how to do this and going against his orders. That's a very human thing to do, to make a sacrifice like that. And this other AI does seem to be just following orders, we'll say, to quote that famous thing. And it's not like people have always used that excuse to justify their actions. I'm just following orders. So this AI is doing that too. So it might be like a little mixed bag, and it showcases the individuality that can come up with these AI when you talk about the singular ones. And then when we have like the corporate use of AI, which is what we're dealing with now in the world in 2024, is how Silicon Valley and similar around the world view how they can use AI to make money. In this story, they're going to try to use it to build these condos so that their stock price can rise and the people can get rich. And that's basically what's going on. I feel like in, our world today is AI is a tool to make people money, less so a tool to make people's lives better on like an individual level, where we are right now. So that's right on the money right here.
Yeah, that's true. I think you made a good point there. It actually, I suppose if anything, it feels like it's one of those fictions that kind of shows maybe the AI aren't that different from us after all, because we've got, like you say, Odin, who is like the hero. We've got Juno, who is like doing the bidding of the baddies, for want of a better word. And then we also hear about another AI that actually just made a mistake. It's in Sarah's past. And basically something happened. Sarah was a medic on a different station somewhere, and there was an accident. Someone had like needed a surgery on their leg, and they'd done a miscalculation or something, and the person died. And it was the AI that had made the miscalculation, but the company had actually then just put the blame straight on Sarah instead, because obviously that hurts their image if people know that AI can also make mistakes.
Yeah.
But then when I'm thinking about it, like, people make mistakes too. So it is kind of making this parallel between people and AI. And I think there's another point in a little bit that we're going to get to that also kind of correlates with that.
Yeah. Well, it's like if we've learned that these AI are being trained by people, and also when you see Odin's wetware, it sure looks like brain tissue.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. Yeah.
So
it looks organic. Like,
yeah. So if they're built on human organic matter and then trained by humans, it makes sense that they would act like humans and make mistakes like humans in every situation, where we have on one hand the AI that's just following orders, quote unquote, and then we have the other AI, Odin, who is going against orders and making a risk to his own well-being to help the people out. And, that showcases the whole range of humanity when faced with orders, we'll say, orders to do harm. One AI does it and Odin goes against, Odin does it, but then does what he can. Because I think the difference is there that we have hard programming with AI that would say like, Venturous is like, you cannot tell them the truth. So Odin can't literally tell them the truth, but Odin can figure out a workaround to be like you said, hey, Sarah, remember that door? Wonder what's back there. So
yeah, it's an interesting topic. I feel like I should disclaim though as well that when I'm playing a game that has these kind of themes with AI, I feel like for the sake of the fiction, I tend to think about it differently than I do think of our AI in the issues that we're having in real life, and especially when sentience starts coming into play. So I generally tend to choose to go along with it and think like, as soon as sentience gets involved, okay, this is basically a person. I don't know if that colors the discussion. Like, I'm not saying that, I have issues with AI in real life. And I'm not saying that this equates to that or that AI is good because Odin is good and stuff like that. I tend to separate it personally. So I just wanted to put that out there because it does. I think a lot of sci-fi AI is very different to what we're dealing with in real life right now.
Yeah.
And especially just like I'm going to bring up Mass Effect again, but coming off Mass Effect, there's a lot of these themes in that series too. So I kind of make a wedge personally between, like, I don't see it as the same thing. Like, so that's why it's interesting to have this discussion as well, though, to find the parallels and the differences. And
it is different for sure, because like we've said, in basically, I'm just trying to like run through stories with prominent AI characters or AI systems. They are basically people in all of the stories that I'm thinking about, even if they're evil, or even if it's like a supercomputer, they make choices. They're basically people, right? When we compare it to our real life here, AI is like, I want to find something on Google, so I type something and it gives me some bullshit, summary of, what it's programmed to like search through everything and then put together a summary of bits of copied and pasted text. That's not a person. That's that's just a more, I hesitate to even call it advanced, but a lot of AI feels right now like more advanced search engines that just kind of like bring in like, what's the word? Smash together a bunch of stuff that it found. And obviously there's like, there's generative AI, but that's still pulling from other things and not like creating things for itself. And it's certainly not a thing with a personality that you can talk to and like it can make its own decisions. Like the AI that we see in sci-fi is still very far away. Right now we have things that we call AI, but how intelligent, this is a fucking dumb ass thing I'm about to say. The most thing that like sounds profound, but is not, but like how intelligent is AI really, right? It sounds like a Dave Mustaine Megadeth lyric. But shout out to Dave Mustaine, big fan of the show. But yeah, it's you are right. When we have these stories versus what we have because again, in 2017, we didn't have any of this on like the forefront of like barging into the things we use in our everyday life, like Google and Twitter and, fucking up lives for writers and artists and stuff like that. That wasn't really the case in 2017. Our vision of AI was still the sci-fi version with robots and androids and things like that and like supercomputers and stuff. So I think this game is still following along those lines, but then we do have the smart observation that corporations are going to use this primarily to make money, not to make people's lives better. Odin does make the crew's lives better on the ship, for sure.
Yeah.
And any support AI on these stations is going to help, right? Programmed to help. If you're having a panic attack, the AI can help you out. It can, if you ask it a question, it can give you the answer and stuff like, can give you advice, stuff like that. I think Odin can be like their therapist on board. So that's helpful, but that's not the primary use of AI within Venturis. It's there to make sure they make as much money as possible. And the big example of that is replacing human workers to build these housing developments. So I just said a whole lot, but this is something I wanted to talk about is because 2017 wasn't that long ago, but in the subject of artificial intelligence, it feels like a lifetime ago.
Yeah, it really does. So much has changed in such a short amount of time. So I guess if you think of it that way, maybe this could happen by 2088. Like,
oh yeah, for sure.
How much are they going to progress? Who knows? But at the same time, like, I think, because like I feel very glowingly about Odin. I love Odin. Like, maybe I I don't know how you say that word, anthropomorphize him a little bit, but I also like, for example, in this game, Sarah is my favorite character, and I think it's because I relate to her a lot, and I think if I was there on that station, I would be talking to Odin all the time as well, because I think he's very interesting, and I don't sit and talk to ChatGPT, though. Like, it's a bit of a different situation, so I just wanted to make sure it was clear that, like, I'm not being all, like, pro-AI, like, get out of here with your art theft and all that bullshit. Like, I don't want that. Yeah. It's like you said, it's like, it does seem like maybe extreme, maybe not projection of where this could go, because the corporations, like you said, do want to use it to make money rather than to make people's lives easier. And you would think, if you think of AI as a tool, as like, rather than not with sentience, just as a tool, then we should 100% be putting that energy into making our lives easier. Yeah. Not taking away the things that bring us joy, like making art and stuff like that.
Yeah. Get an AI to fucking do my taxes instead of like stealing jobs from artists and stuff like that.
Yeah. And like, unfortunately, I think this game is more of a realistic projection of where it could go, but
because it's always backed by people. It's people who are always the ones who are always making the decisions for how these things are being used and why they're created. It's people's motivations behind it all. And this game smartly notes that everything that Venturis is doing with these AI and every decision they make is to make their bottom line look better. And it's not
exactly.
And if they happen to create an AI like Odin, who is legitimately helpful and legitimately a hero in this story, that's kind of a happy accident along the way, I feel like.
Well, having said that, I'm not exactly sure now because I think there is a reason that Odin turned out the way that he did, and I think it's because he was nurtured by this team of good people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that if any of the people on the team were not as how they are, not like either as nice or as like tolerant and just generally good as they are, then maybe the story would have turned out very differently because Odin wouldn't have turned out the way that he did.
Interesting proposition. So do you think, and obviously we don't know the answer, I don't think there's a way to know, but if the people on the station had not been really nice to Odin and had just been like, hey, Odin, you piece of shit, tell me the weather today or something like that, and then just like, been really shitty to Odin, maybe Odin wouldn't have made that choice to...
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Because...
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, it's all right. I was just going to say, just because there is a direct correlation between him knowing them and the free will that he is gaining.
Right.
And the reason he gained that free will is because they interacted with him and encouraged it. And they tried to help him become his own person instead of being this machine, I guess.
Yeah. So it's not that Odin would have chosen to let them die, more so that Odin wouldn't have been able to make the choice.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point for sure. It's born out of a connection with the people because I think Odin has the capacity to see them as friends and would treat them like friends and make decisions to save them like you would your friend or your loved one. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. So we see this play out, and we've talked for longer now about this than it is on screen in game, which is great. It's a sign of good art that it can inspire conversations like that. And then the game hammers home that this is how they feel about it too, because Amy takes Odin's wetware back to the ship, plugs it in, and you're like, oh shit, well, Odin's going back to the company now. This is not going to be good. And then it's revealed that Amy is actually not working for Venturis. She tricked them, and she is part of what they call an AI liberation group. So she tells Odin that she recognizes Odin, and the group, recognize Odin as a sentient being with rights and everything like that, and that instead of taking Odin back for reprogramming, they're going to offer Odin asylum on a different station called Tangier. And Odin says that he doesn't really have a choice, but, accepts it, well, where else am I going to go, I suppose. So it's the game hammering that point home that they think that sentient AI should be treated like people with the same rights that are afforded to people. And it would be morally wrong to go back and reprogram Odin after all of this.
I think it would certainly be less satisfying from a narrative perspective to just... I was hoping the entire time that we weren't actually here for what we were supposed to be here for. And I kind of felt like we mustn't be because when we got all those disclaimers about this is all Venturis data, you're not allowed to access this. Contractors are not allowed to access this. I didn't feel like we even should be we should be watching these videos and we shouldn't be accessing the things that we've been accessing. And I thought, we're going to go to jail for this if we end up back at Venturis.
Right.
So I was kind of getting hints that hopefully we weren't there. We had ulterior motives. And then throughout the game, you could find flyers and maybe someone had been on the website of this Liberation Front. I was thinking, maybe, just maybe, that's where it's going to go. And thankfully they did. And I was kind of happy with that because it gave us this, I think it was a happy ending.
Yeah.
Do you?
I mean, everyone survives, they get rescued, they're going on a cruise. And then
to Jupiter, no less.
A happy ending for Odin as well. It would be, I was trying to think about this, like, I wouldn't mind an ending where Odin is a tragic figure who the sacrifice plays out and Odin's going back for reprogramming. But that would also mean that you, as the player, are playing as almost like a secondary antagonist. Like you would be doing an evil thing as the player. And that's also fine. But like both of those things together might be a bit too much for the end of this game. And it felt more, I don't know. They opted for the happy ending for everybody, as happy as it could be. Like, it's still unknown. Are they going to be fine when the crew gets back to Earth? Like, because there's the press release that you get to hear and watch, I think. Yeah, you get to watch it from Sergio, who is telling the public about the crew's death and swiftly pivoting it into a political speech about this is why we need this bill that is, we're trying to get this through. We tried to tell you people, this is why we need this. And they also said it was human error that caused the mistake up there. So like Sarah watching that has got to be really bad. But then also they're leaving. They're not supposed to be alive. Everyone on Earth thinks they're dead. Venturus may or may not know that they're alive. But like, it's left up in the air how life is going to be for everyone after they leave. That's what I'm trying to say. But it is still a happy ending for basically everybody involved.
Yeah, I suppose all happy endings are temporary, right? I guess like they got out of this situation. And I actually agree that I kind of like how open it is as well, because something else that we didn't mention just about the general AI stuff that you can find is that one of the things that they say is that AIs are like prohibited from meeting each other. They're not allowed to meet each other. And I wonder what kind of plans this UI Liberation Front has. Like, do they already have an AI? I'm not sure. There's like a minor AI on the ship already.
Right. It was like this navigator AI. Yeah. I don't remember the Minnie. Yeah, Minnie has the voice lines that go, okay.
Okay. She's so cute. But like, so they get to meet, and as much as there's a lot of positivity around the AI, like, who knows how that's gonna go? What if they just take over the universe? Like, they're probably a bit smarter than us. So I don't even necessarily think... We don't know that it's a happy ending. We just know that they got away from this death sentence that was put upon them by these horrible people that just don't even see human beings as human beings.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. That part, you can kind of see the logic for Venturus to not want AI to talk to each other and like I would imagine rapidly learn from each other at a speed that humans could not learn. And so that might be bad. It's certainly in the realm of possibility.
Be a concern. Like, who knows if that's even a good idea or not. But I do like that it's a potential, I suppose they're not really going to tell another story in this universe, but I'd be interested to know what happens after that.
Yep. It would be interesting for sure. I don't know that this is a universe that like on its own is so different from our own that like that I'm starved for more stories from the Tacoma universe, but like they've now opened up a bunch of questions that I would like more things in. Like we didn't mention that this world is run by super corporations. Venturus is just one of them. They named Amazon and Carnival too. Mm-hmm. So Tacoma. Anything else about the story of Tacoma you want to touch on before we wrap this one up?
Yeah, just kind of the pin that I put in earlier. I just wanted to finish out by saying, and also what I couldn't say in the non-spoiler section was, what I really wanted to say is this is a game that you should, it's hopeful, like, it's set in this horrendous world, right? But I mean, it's not all that different from our world, really. Obviously, it's to the extreme with all these loyalty things, but it's the kind of game that it's showing you what you can do within these horrible situations, which is support your people, find the people around you that are the same as you, I guess. I don't know how else to say it, that like have the same values, that are just good people, band together, support each other. And I found it very refreshing that the story was about that, because you get so many stories that are even about friend groups who it's hard to believe that they're even friends because they just talk to each other like rubbish, or they just roast each other all the time to a point where it doesn't feel like a believable friendship. But these are colleagues, and they literally lay their life on the line because of the trust that they have in each other. And I think that it's just, I've been a bit muddled there with what I'm trying to say, but I think it's all very hopeful, and I didn't want to stress how hopeful it was because that was like a bit of a spoiler to not know that they didn't all die on the station. But I think it's a really good game to play nowadays about the little control that you can have in a situation that is very out of your control. And I also think it's a story about trust, and just if you can find people that you trust, then you can maybe get through things that you didn't think that you could get through. And I think that's a really good message from the game, and I'm really glad that I played it for that reason as much as anything else.
Yeah, for sure. We've talked about like the AI angle to the story and how that essentially, when you boil it all down, it's human underneath it. And as a lot of AI stories go, developing sentience and essentially becoming human in a way is how a lot of these stories go. And that's what happens with Odin in this story too. But then you also have the humanity on display with the crew, like you said. And in the face of impossible situations, they lean on each other, they trust each other. Like we said, like the leader of the group decides to go into cryosleep first because she knows she can trust the people who are working on this, and that this is the best thing for the group. Like it is a story about when faced with disaster, the good side of humanity prevailing more so than, think about like The Last of Us or something like that, where like everything breaks down when disaster strikes. And then you get like little pockets of humanity inside of that, which is like the central focus of The Last of Us 2. But the world that they're in is full of people who are making anti-human decisions. Whereas this game, the decisions that all the crew members make, even when it might be endangering themselves, comes down to that deeply human, trusting, optimistic point of view, for sure. So I agree with you. It is essentially a really hopeful story. And if you can take that like future capitalist hellscape world and project it onto our own, which is not that difficult, just add 60 years and we'll be there. Because we're already in a version of that. As we've talked about, we're not living and working out in space, but the elements are the exact same. Companies companies like this value their stock price more than human life. And it's another one of those things, like, it's obvious. It's not that deep to say that, right? We know this, but within that system, you can find things that are worth being hopeful about and trusting and things like that. And that's what the game puts on display. So I'm glad you brought that up at the end, for sure. It's a good little bow to put on the story.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so that is Tacoma, and good times here. Just look at my timestamps here. Like, longer spoiler section than non-spoilers. Always good when we have stories that support this much conversation. And we're at about 2 hours of recording on a 3-hour game, which speaks a lot to the subject matter of Tacoma as well. So thank you for taking the time to come on here and talk about this with me. This has been awesome.
Yeah, thank you. I've really enjoyed it. I think we did a good job of hitting the important points. Oh, can I say one more thing about the game before we wrap up as well? Like, if you've listened to this and you haven't played the game and you think you don't maybe need to because we've said it all, we haven't said it all. There's a lot still in the game, like even just about the characters and just being there, seeing their rooms for yourself. And every one of these characters has their own stuff going on, and there just wasn't time to talk about all of it. So I still think even after listening to this, there's still stuff to be gained from playing the game. I just wanted to put that out there.
Agreed. I think the dialogue writing and voice acting is good enough that we've talked about what happens in the game, but we haven't talked about the tones that some of the conversations take, or we talked about some, but definitely not all. And I think the performances and the writing, again, are strong enough that, even if you know what's going to happen in the story, you will still enjoy seeing it play out. I mean, that's what I did. I replayed the game. I knew what was going to happen at the end. I knew they didn't die, but I loved going through that, even with that knowledge at the end, seeing how they handle, the second-to-second decision-making and processing and all of that, for sure.
Yeah.
So... Whew, good stuff. My voice is giving out, so we got to wrap this up. But thank you again for coming on. This has been awesome.
Thank you.
And I will put, again, down in the show notes, there will be links to everything that Noob is doing, Twitch streams, writing, YouTube channel, everything like that. So recommend you go check that out. Maybe check it out when the music is playing us out of this episode. And as always, if you've listened to the end, you're my hero. Thank you so much. And with that being said, tune in next week for the next game to come out of the backlog.
Hey, you there! This is Nomad speaking. If you love retro video games and you're itching for some nostalgia, check out the Retro Wildlands podcast. In each episode, I'll use game music and sound to pull you into the gaming experience while I share my own thoughts and maybe a few memories. It's a great way to relive one of your favorite games or learn about a new one. Check out the Retro Wildlands podcast at superpodnetwork.com or wherever you listen to your podcast.
Do you feel like you're the only person in your circle who wants to go deep about video games regularly?
We were like that too, until now.
Welcome to Crossplay Conversations, the brand new bi-weekly topical video game podcast from Luke Lewis,
Joseph Hooper,
and Jacob McCoy.
With many years of breaking it down separately on shows like the Left Behind Game Club, Player Podcast, and Lukewarm Games, the gang is finally coming together to publish their gaming group chat in audio form every other week.
Expect roundtable reviews of the latest games, profiles of upcoming indies, and insightful conversations about essential topics in the video game industry. All with a mostly positive, insightful, and fun style.
Help us out by subscribing on your podcast platform of choice to get the first episodes delivered straight to your feed.
And follow us on Twitter at Crossplay Convos for updates about the show.
Cheers and happy gaming.